if you're an Italian restaurant, as I was saying before, you can target actual Italian restaurant customers, basically who are your direct competitors. And you could get their email addresses or their phone numbers, which, because of most people using cell phone, you can identify a user tied to a phone number pretty well. A home number doesn't work, but cell phones. So you may not be able to get everybody, but you can get what you get. And when you're doing the PPC, it's not about doing everything. It's about taking what is worth doing and not doing the rest. And then, that's just it. So anyway, you can rent the quote unquote list from Nextmark. Technically, it's supposed to be you're renting the list for one-time use. There's a way to actually get full access to that list, but bottom line, they have the list of the customers already that you want, and then you can upload that to Google's custom audiences. There's a custom audience here where you can target actually, which is a totally different thing. This is an uploaded audience, and I apologize if I can't remember the exact term that Google calls it, but this is where you upload a list of email addresses or phone numbers so that you can target users on the Google Display Network. And then with that, if you're an Italian restaurant, you don't need the Programmative Ad Network. You can just target the people who you exactly want, who's most likely to buy, and what you want as your customer to steal or poach those from your direct competitor. Have them try your product, which you know that you can get them hooked on if they just tried it, and now you have them from now on. Which, if you can do things that targeted, obviously you'll spend every dollar that Google will take from you, if it gives you that kind of opportunity. That's all real. That's actually all really real and able for you to do. So you could look into that. So that gets rid of the other remaining kind of thing, why you would want to use a Programmative Ad Network as opposed to Google Display Network. Google Display Network, I didn't write down my list here, but it's obviously a lot of times cheaper, and you can decide on a more precise level what the traffic is worth. So if let's say you got a 400% ROI on what you're doing with any of the things that I just told you that you could do there, you don't have to quit. Just bid 50% less for that traffic on Google Display Network, which is a self-serving interface for you to go in and do that. And hey, what do you know? Of course, if you have manual bidding, which I would recommend always using until you at least get familiar and understanding what you have is going to work, and then maybe eventually you can let the algorithm kind of run your ads for you a little bit to get you a little bit more leverage or exposure and overall potential from what you've discovered works as far as creating a sales funnel. But then you got the 800% ROI. It may be only at half the level that you had before, but it's feasible, and now it just turns profit on and on and on. That's, again, like I said at the beginning of the video, what your goal should always be, to find out through tracking what the value of a certain traffic is, dial in your bids, and then move on to the next traffic source that you can do the same thing with as well. So, but yeah, it's usually on top of everything else, I found it's just normally cheaper visitor for the same quality of traffic, and you can dial in your bids. So for me, Programmative Ad Networks, all that's left, the only reason why I'm using it is anything that Google won't let me do. As far as creating your own uploaded email list, just to let you know that there are restrictions. You got to have, I believe it is at least 100 conversions. Before they weren't not letting you do it. So if you're wondering and you're telling me Corey is screaming through the screen right now, you can't do that. Well, they changed it so you can do it now. Before, if you uploaded an email list or phone number list, you could only target those people on Google search, so that if they typed in your keywords, they would only have your ad trigger for that person if they were also on your list. Now you could do it on the display network, so that that person shows up on the one of millions and millions and millions of sites out there, like 90% of sites that have actual banner ads that you can see on those sites. You can show up for that person on those sites. So for respectively speaking, every single person on your list of emails that Google also has the same email for the person that, of course, they track that through, if you have a Gmail account or you have a YouTube account, you use that email, they're going to match that user up with your email list on your list, and they know who you want to target now. But But if you find a match, which you may only match 50% of the list you upload, but that list, you will be able to get in front of that person on that list that's matched every single time, because they're going to be on some site, and in reality, lots and lots of sites that Google also has, Google AdSense on, which, again, just to clear up what that is, if you have a website, you want to make money with banner ads and advertising, you just set up Google AdSense code on your site for where you want the banners to show up, and then Google then has whatever ads they want to show up on your site, and then if they click, you get some of the, like half of the revenue from the person who decided to advertise on your site, and then Google gets the other half. But in that situation, it's similar how to the Programmative Ad Network system in terms of you paying for certain people that you're going to be able to advertise to works. It's the same thing there, that in this case, you're just going to, if you want to just target people that were on your email list, you could do it. And, that person may only frequent 3 or 4 or 5 sites, but chances are on at least half of those sites, they have Google AdSense running, because most people who want to run banner ads on their site and make money through advertising has Google AdSense. So then there you go. You pretty much have access to every person on your list. And so anyway, you may have to look up the requirements, but either way, the requirements are not so onerous that you can't get past them. It's just minor stuff. Just want to let you know that it takes a little bit of a ramp up period before they'll let you do it, but you might have to run some other ads first, in other words. So anyway, that's that. And then the other, if they didn't give you enough reasons already why Google Display Network's better, then the last one is a reason enough as well, just all in itself, basically, which is Google Display Network clicks. There's no no is a strong word. There's never really none, but no/less click fraud on the Google Display Network versus these programmative ad networks, because there's actually several reasons. And if you don't know what click fraud is, it's just basically you're paying for a fake user who wants to basically make, like if I have a site and I want to make money with banner ads through Google AdSense, like I talked to you about, or through a programmative ad network that I'm having power my ads, then basically I want to make money. I'll have fake users click on your ads, and you're paying for fake people. So it's been a huge problem in the programmative ad space of trying to figure out how to weed that stuff out so that people don't quit as advertising partners with the programmative ad networks. And in a case it serves them, sort of. Obviously, if you're a huge company and they have a bunch of fraud, they're making money on fraud, and the big company doesn't know otherwise because they have deep enough pockets to where they won't go broke, like a small company would, and also has very tangible goals, which you should always have tangible goals with what you're doing so you don't get screwed over like that. But Google has, all the history on each user that's signed in that they have. And even if you're not signed in, they can track you for years, basically. So understand who's clicking on the ads, if that's a real person or not, because they have years and years of history on every person that uses their search engine or is on a site that they have Google AdSense on, which is basically more user data than anybody else has on the web. Also through YouTube. It's more than Facebook, more than anybody. Ultimately, at the end of the day, then they have something called hop detection. So the click fraud, one of the ways that Google has, the reason why they are so dominant is they had algorithms to figure out what's just a fake user versus not. And one of the ways they did that is they determine the people that are doing the click fraud and trying to make money like that, they'll try to look like a different user each time. And the internet works by, you have to travel through multiple routers across the internet to be able to download something off a website. Well, they developed algorithms to identify and track that user through the internet. And if you're a person trying to fake it and look like somebody else, click the ad, do a bunch of stuff so you look unique again, click another ad, so on and so forth. Google, through the algorithms, can tell there's just some stuff you can't fake. It's not perfect, but and you'll notice if you advertise, they give you credit for all the fake clicks that all the time. You'll see credit on your billing section. They catch this stuff after the fact. So they're very honest and like that. And of course, we don't know how accurate that is, but at least they're trying, and they have very, very sophisticated hop detection tracking on top of just knowing their users and having algorithms to determine a real user, what they look like versus a fake user, what they look like in machine learning. They also have IP blocking. So they can block up, obviously, a user that once a IP address has had a lot of bot traffic, they can just block it on their end. But they also let you, the user, block an IP address from your campaign. So if somebody has a certain IP, you just won't ever pay for that click to begin with. And with the programmative ad networks, you can block an IP address from being able to go to your site, but you still got to pay for the click. And there's no way to ask for a refund. So what you can do is you can use a software, which I back the software, click fraud software, ClickCease, for this. And so you on top of using Google and Google Display Network, running your advertising, them having inherently all this fraud detection built within it, the ClickCease software will keep Google honest, if you will, and tell you which IP addresses have users that were on your site for 5 seconds or less. And that's gotten better since the last time I talked about them on my videos here. But for the most part, that adds another layer. And with Google Display Network, I found there might be 5-10% of fake traffic that if you use this ClickCease will find. And then what happens is it automatically allows you to ask for a refund and block those IP addresses that were found to be fake, i.e. users that average less than 5 seconds on the site. And users that average less than 5 seconds on the site ask for a refund on those users, and actually on top of it, but mainly I should say, to block those IPs from clicking on your ads in the future, so the people that are running click fraud businesses, if you will be weeded out over time. And because it's the same kind of general people that are known to do this stuff. Well, they also have their own IP logs, which they can block all those IPs for you from their database at ClickCease. But then also it'll constantly be on the lookout for IP addresses that are generating traffic that's not converting, and asking to block and ask for a refund on those clicks as well, on top of everything else. So very, very, very good. Again, without even monitoring and asking for a refund using ClickCease, it's like 10% of the traffic is totally fake, or 5%. And don't attack me, Google, but if you could get that almost near zero if you use ClickCease, and the software pretty much automates that process for you. But bottom line, the Google's resources are still more quality or qualified to find click fraud than the crowdsource solutions out there that keep the programmative ad networks quality and weeding out the fraud clicks. Ultimately, what happens is the programmative ad networks will tell you that they have there's companies out there that specifically kind of do what I mentioned ClickCease does, but they'll find IP addresses that are bots, and then they'll create a database, and they'll sell those to all the programmative ad networks. So they crowdsource the data, if you will, which you're saying, well, that's better than what you told me ClickCease has. Well, Google's crowdsourced data from their own first-party data is still better than that. And again, Google's playing the long-term game. They don't, and not to say that they haven't done anything unethical. I mean, all big companies have some to blame for no matter what, because that's just their profit. In the process of making profit, that's how it is, whatever. But the programmative ad networks, the industry's dying, first of all, so they don't have a long-term view like they did before. And they benefit greatly from the click fraud, and they normally deal with bigger companies. Also because there's minimums. Generally, sometimes you have to have a $5,000 minimum just to get any traffic at all from a programmative ad network, because they want the bigger companies, which in my mind is because they know that their traffic doesn't convert very well because they have a lot of click fraud to start with, let's say. Obviously part of it is they don't want to deal with a bunch of small people, it's too much. There isn't a lot of profit in that, but gets you thinking. So anyway, that's a whole another thing by itself, just about the click fraud and all that in itself. So obviously people have different opinions about that, but this is my what I've seen personally. And so Google Display Network can be, just to sum everything up, very profitable, just as profitable or more profitable than Google search advertising, than Facebook advertising, actually more than Facebook advertising, because Facebook is going through the same problems that programmatic ad networks were before, losing third-party cookie data, mobile IDs. You can ask people who have been running Facebook ads for years. They'll tell you their results have been hit recently. Not everybody that you maybe talk to, but a lot. I get several clients asking me what we can do about that. My answer is always the same. Invest in Google. It's like they may say, oh, I don't want to feed the beast, but it's the same. What's that saying? If you can't beat them, join them. For me, I am just not going to mess around with, I won't. There's so much opportunity to leverage and scale that you don't need anything else, respectively. There's a lot of clients that make 10, 20, $30 million a year that I've seen or built up to both just with a Google Ads account. That, literally speaking, it depends obviously on your niche size. If you're just selling, if you're a local service company versus something like, let's say, a regional local service company with a bunch of branches, even a local regional service company between Google, the search ads and the display network, we're doing 25 million a year just on the Google ads itself. So for me, and what I tell people is, don't worry about anything else. Just do it or hunting trips. That's the type of person who buys firearms. If I'm a firearm seller, I want to be able to still if I could get access to knowing exactly who buys these firearms and spends big money on them and get my banner ad in front of them, yes, I want to do that. And because Google won't let me, I can do it through a secondary private programmative ad network that specializes in firearm enthusiasts, if you will. But not enthusiasts, but usually, so you can target based on, the programmative ad networks, they can offer, you to target enthusiasts, but the bigger, more valuable thing specifically is people who buy. Because a customer is a lot more, you can know a lot more about somebody who buys than somebody who's just on a forum in terms of valuing that user and knowing what their value is before you make the investment into that user, if you will, or just in general what they're worth, finding out through your tracking, advertising to that person. The ROI is not there, therefore you can't pay very much for the banner, whereas the banner is worth a lot if that person's a known buyer and buys a lot, and now I have my ad in front of that person, therefore they can sell the advertising for more, the most money possible, which is what everybody's going for at the end of the day with this system. So anyway, I know it's a little bit complicated, but in general, it's to be able to get in front of other customers or to get into tap people that traditionally you can't do with mainstream advertising networks. If the other thing that these programmatic ad networks do, by the way, is they get you in front of the actual customer based upon the customer databases. So like at Ace Hardware, going back to that previous example, if they have a loyalty program that they can get you to sign up for, which if you're wondering why you're always asked to sign up for a loyalty program, they can get your known information there. Then when you use that same email that you write down on the card, when you're on, let's say Amazon.com, they now have the information that you are now an Ace Hardware visitor, so that they can personalize the experience a little bit more to you on Amazon. But as it comes to advertising specifically, then any website where you have to log in, they know who you are based upon your email address, because that email address was tied to you and your activity at that Ace Hardware when you signed up for the loyalty program. So, and then it doesn't have to be a loyalty program, of course. If you sell a more expensive product and they have your name, that information, again, can be tied to an email address or a phone number, which then if you enter that information on another site, then they know who you are and your past activity because they rented that data from another third-party provider. This is how Facebook got to be big in terms of, advertising and being a go-to source for advertising, because Facebook didn't have a lot of data on their own in the beginning. They would just, based upon your login on Facebook, they would rent data from other people that had other services and then they would, a lot of times you use the same email for Facebook as you do with other things, and then they crowdsource all the information about their users on Facebook. So then now, if I want to target somebody who buys fishing equipment a lot and they're a nut for that kind of thing, they know which Facebook user is a nut for fishing supplies, and now me, the fishing supply company that wants to sell those fishing supplies, and there's an opportunity for me to just target anybody in the general demographics of 45 plus male, whatever. I can actually target that, or the person that actually actively now buys the fishing equipment. So anyway, that's how the system has worked. I tried to keep it simple for you guys. I don't need all this in-depth information, so you understand in general what value and what the point of it actually was. Now, why Google Display Network is getting to be a much better deal than the Programmative Ad Networks out there. So third-party cookies are going away. Mobile IDs, Apple has blocked mobile ID tracking, the way that I described it before, where they track your behavior on the device at the device level. Third-party cookies are getting blocked. Safari blocks third-party cookies because there's device-level tracking, there's browser-level tracking, and there's site-level tracking. If you want to, there's also app-level tracking. And those are the four main places where tracking is done on a macro scale and then pawned off or sold or auctioned off to other people that are interested in your data on those platforms in general. But third-party cookies are not going to be there and able to be tracked on web browsers, which was the big place these programmative ad networks actually got their data from, because a web browser tells you pretty much everything about a user, because that's where you buy from. So they're not going to be able to get data. Traditionally, they got it from mobile devices. Well, that's getting closed off because Apple is already closed off itself. And then Chrome in 2023 is completely not allowing cookies. And then the other, which is 56% of the browser market, and Safari and Firefox hasn't allowed it anymore. Internet Explorer, I believe they still allow it still. And so that's going to go away. And then the IP address tracking, like I described before, that's also through the world of the trend to more anonymity online, that's also not becoming viable. So in a way, all this works out to Google's advantage, because Google has first-party data that they can use based upon their Google AdSense, which is the partner program they have with people who own websites to run banner ads on those sites, which is why you can use Google Display Network to target people that pretty much anywhere or any site that they have on the web. They have almost 90% of the market out there. And so they own Google Chrome, so now that they block third-party cookies there for so-called privacy, don't attack me, Google, now they have made it really hard for the one competitor they kind of did have, which was these programmative ad networks. They won't have the capability to know about how to sell information about specific users to people who want to run banner advertising. And of course, they still have CRM level data from like loyalty programs and just customer databases still, but the third-party cookies, mobile IDs, IP address banks, that stuff's going away. So if you're having less results with a programmative ad network than you had before, that's why, and it's going to probably, in my opinion, it has to only get worse from here. So Google is stepping up their game and targeting customer networks or behavior. So there's a thing called custom audiences. So you can create a custom audience, or if you want to call it a cohort of traits that make up your perfect customer. As I talked about at the beginning of the video, everything with this banner advertising is being able to research your customer and narrow it down to certain traits that you could identify, that if you knew pretty much every customer that buys has these traits and they get in front of those exact people, then the ROI on your banner ad shows up. So what I'll do a lot of times is, to get in front of these actual customers, I'll just write down and make a custom audience there. You can research how that's done, but custom display audience. and I write down the websites, www.domain.com, of each one of my direct competitors, and now I've got an audience of somebody who's hit one of my competitors' audiences or sites in the last 30 days or so. Of course, but you could also put their brand names in there, so if they search for those trademarks or whatever in the past, you can also do that as well. So that's pretty clever. So that kind of takes out the main thing that the Programmative Ad Networks had for a long time. But then also they're doing a lot better job to get more information, because they have Android, they have Chrome, they also all these places and how the Programmative Ad Networks and ad industry is built up to a multi-billion-dollar market every year. They now, whereas Programmative Ad Networks are having harder time getting access to data, Google's having, a better and better time. The market share on the browser market, on the device market, if you will, and their algorithms to identify and do data matching and so on and so forth just keeps getting better. In that, basically you can target people who, with that, you can find just default audiences in the Google Display Network settings, like somebody who's interested in wedding registries. If that's what you want, there's already a pre-populated audience that's there that has all the people that you want. If you want somebody who normally eats lunch out every day, instead of bringing a bag lunch, they have a pre-populated audience for that. These are just real world audiences that are there. I'm giving you examples on that you could target right now today. And they have a ton more. But for what you don't have, you can make a custom audience and you can do that. And it doesn't have to just be somebody who hit my competitor's site. You can make a whole list. So instead of having to telling these Programmative Ad Networks kind of what you want, and it's kind of sort of black box, you can literally speaking do the research and testing and to find out what exact traits and targeting is going to work for yourself with these custom audiences. You could say, must have been on my competitor's site in the last 30 days. Must have searched for my competitor in the last 30 days. They must have searched for DIY information in the last 30 days. And if they didn't make all three lists, which narrows down, your customer further and further and further. So if one didn't work by itself, you can try narrowing it down with two. Must have traits for that user in order to tell Google that you're willing to spend money for that particular user, and to the point where you've got your perfect audience. And then, of course, the CRM, targeting actual customers of somebody, so that there's no actual. So Google does have in the Google Display Network audiences for targeting people who are avid purchasers of things, but what you still can't kind of do is target just with the kind of the default interface there, somebody who's an Ace Hardware customer or a Pizza Hut customer per se. You can get somebody who's on that site, which gives you very high likelihood that they do buy from that place. But to specifically target customers with certain vendors, you can't quite do it with Google Display Network, which you could do with Programmative Ad Networks before, and currently still a little bit, or for whatever's left of it. There are actual workarounds with Google Display Network that you can even do that, which I'm going to explain. It's on 4 on my list. I'll just get into now. Basically, with Google Display Network, you can create your own custom list through email or phone number targeting, which is Programmative Ad Networks. Again, this is kind of how they get you in front of certain customers or certain companies or vendors out there or whatever. You can go to a site called Nextmark. There's traditionally through like direct mail and stuff, you could target people who are purchasers of a certain company's products or services, or a certain category like Italian restaurant customers, high-end Italian restaurant customer regulars. You could literally get a list